Hello everyone. Myself, Mrs. Namita Amrutkar, Assistant Professor at Abhidayanandar Senior College, and I welcome you all to a new session on problem solving using computer and C programming. I hope you all are doing well and ready to learn another important topic in C programming. In today's lecture, we are starting Unit 4 Array Part 1. Array are one of the most important concepts in a programming because they allows us to store multiple values of the same data type using single variable name. This make programs simple and more organized and easier to manage. In this lecture, we will first understand the concept of an array, then we will discuss the type of array, including one-dimensional, two-dimensional and multi-dimensional array. After that, we will learn how to perform array operation such as declaration, initialization, and accessing array element. We will also study the memory presentation of a two-dimensional array to understand how arrays are stored in memory. Finally, we will explore real-life application of array and see where they are commonly used in programming. So, let's begin our journey into the world of array with the first topic, concept of an array. Now that we have understood the basic concept of an array, let's look some real life example where array are commonly used. An array is used whenever we need to store a large number of values of the same type. Uh, for example, first example is list of employees in the organization. Imagine a company has 200 employees. Instead of creating variable like employee 1, employee 2, employee 3 and so on, we can simply create one array to store all employee name or employee IDs. This makes the program much simpler and easier to manage. The second example is the test score of a data type class of a student. Suppose there are 60 students in a class. Refer that declaring a 6 different variable to store their marks, we can create one array considering all the marks. This also makes easier to calculate the average height marks or a lower marks using loop. Another example, list of customer and their telephone number. Many applications such as contact management system store customer information in array or similar data structure. This helps in searching and displaying, updating the customer record efficiently. Similarly, a list of students in a college can also be represented using an array. If a college has 100 of students, storing their roll number or marks in an array is much more convenient than using individual variable. Suppose we want to represent 100 students in a college. We can write student in square bracket. We have to write down the size of the array and then we have to close in the curly brace. Here student is the array name. It identifies the entire collection of a student data. The number 100 represent the size of the array, which means that the array can store data for 100 students. The value written inside the square bracket is called as a index or a script. The index is used to access individual element of the array. It is important to remember that in C programming language, array indexing always start from 0. So in an array declare as student of 0, the first element is stored uh, at student of 0 and student of 1 will be stored at second element will store there and the last element storing student of 99. This zero-based indexing is one of the most important concepts to remember while working which array because it helps us correctly access and manipulate array element. So these examples show how array help us to organize, manage large amount of similar data efficiently. Now we understand what is an array. Let's discuss the types of an array. Array are mainly classified in three types based on the number of dimensions that have one dimensional array, two dimensional array, and multi-dimensional array. The first type is one dimensional array, also called as a single dimensional array. It stores data in a single row or a list. Each element is accessed using one index. This type of array is commonly used to store value such as marks, age, uh, salaries, or temperature. It's the simplest and most commonly used type of data. The second type is two-dimensional array. It stores data in the form of row and column, just like a table or a matrix. To access element, we can use two indices, one for row and another for column. Two-dimensional array are useful for storing data such as student marks in different subjects, matrices, or tabular information. The third type is multidimensional array. It consists of more than two dimensions. In other words, it is an array of an array with multiple levels, although it is less commonly used in basic programming. It is very useful in advanced applications such as image processing, scientific calculation, 3D graphics, and simulation, where data need to be organized in a multiple dimension. So, to summarize, we can say that array are classified in three types. One-dimensional array for storing data in a single list. Two-dimensional array for storing data in row and column. Multi-dimensional array for handling complex data with more than two dimensions. Now, let's learn about one-dimensional array, which is the simplest and most commonly used data type in C programming. A one-dimensional array is a collection of elements of the same data type stored in a continuous memory location. This means that the elements are placed one after another in memory, allowing the computer to access them efficiently. A one-dimensional array uses only one index, also called as a subscript. To access each element, we had to use a square bracket. Every element has a unique index number. In C programming, array indexing always start from 0, not from 1. If an array element contain five, if array contains a 5 element, the indices value are 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. In general, last index is always size minus 1. Another important point is that all elements are stored under a single array name. For example, if the array name is marks, then the individual element can be accessed marks in square bracket, we have to write down 0, marks in square bracket 1, marks square bracket 2, and so on. This makes it is much easier to store and manage multiple value without creating separate variable. One-dimensional array, which is commonly used, store a list of similar data such as student marks, employee age, monthly salary, daily temperature, or any collection of value that belong to the same category. So, we can summarize like that. One-dimensional array store element of the same data type in continuous memory allocation. Uses single index to access each element. Starting index from 0 and the last index is number of size of the array minus 1. Now we learn how we declare the array. Array declaration is the process of defining the data type name and size of an array. Where we can declare array, the compiler reserve memory to store multiple elements of the same type. However, declaration only creates the array. It does not assign value to the element. As we already know that array element are accessed using indexes. uh, Indexing always start from 0. This means that the first element is stored at index 0, the second at index 1, and so on. The general syntax for array declaration is we have to write down the data type name and followed by the array name. And after that, we have to mention the size of the array. The data type specify the type of element such as integer, character, float, and array name is the name given to the array, and the size indicate the maximum number of element that the array can store. For example, if you write in int a and in square bracket 5, this declaration create an integer array name a that can store 5 integer value. The value index position from this array are 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now let's look at some important key points to remember. The array size must always be a positive integer or a valid constant expression. The declare size determines the maximum number of elements that the array can hold. Also, all array elements are stored in a continuous memory allocation, which allow faster access to the data. Finally, remember the difference between declaration and initialization. While initializing assigning value to the element, and declaration is nothing but to tell the compiler how many element we want to store into that variable. Initialization of one-dimensional array. Initialization means assigning value to the element of an array. That is usually done at the time of declaration so that the array contains data right from the beginning. When initializing an array, all the array are written inside the curly braces and are separated by comma. Each value is automatically stored in a consecutive memory location starting from index 0. The general syntax for initialization of an array is data type, array name. In square bracket, we have to write down the size of that array is equal to opening curly braces, and we have to write down the value 1, value 2, value 3, and so on. For example, if you write int marks and the size of the array is 5, then how we to initialize this? Data type mark in square bracket size of the array 4 is equal to, in curly braces we have to specify the total 5 value. Here I specify 80, 75, 90, 85, 90, 95. There are few important points to remember. If the array size is specified, the number of values should not exceed the declared size. Otherwise, the program will produce a compilation error. If we omit the array size, the compiler automatically determines the size of the number of value provided by. For example, if you write int marks and don't give the size, and in initialization we have to given the elements, number of elements, then it create of array of size which how many numbers we have to given into the opening and closing curly brace. So initialization an easy and efficient way to assign value to an array during its declaration, making the program more readable and reducing extra coding. Now let's understand one-dimensional array by using a simple example. So I write down here the comment example of an one-dimensional array. In this program, we have to input the 5 marks of a one particular student and display all these marks into a screen. So I here first include the file stdio.h. This is the preprocessor. We have to include it for the purpose of using the printf statement. Then we have to start the execution from the your main function. So I write down return type void and the main function. The first thing we have to do is we have to declare the array. We know that the array is declared as a data type, the data type integer. Suppose I given the array name is marks, and in square bracket we have to write down the size of the array. I want to input the five student, five subject marks. Therefore, I mention here five and terminated by the semicolon. Okay. We can also initialize its value by using opening and closing curly brace. Suppose first student marks is 10, I write down here, second is 20, third one is 30, fourth one is 40, and last one is a 50. Okay, we have to close the curly brace and terminated by the semicolon. So this is the declaration and initialization of an one dimensional array. Okay. Uh, Now I want to display it, all these marks. Therefore, I have used here the for loop where to initialize the value of I starting from the always start from the 0. So I is equal to 0, I less than 5, we want to display 5, then we have to write down the increment operators, and for is enclosed with opening and closing curly brace. Before using I, we have to must declare the value of variable I. So I have declared here integer I. Okay. Now I want to display the array. So I have given here printf statement marks for subject 1. One is always remember that array will be a start from the indices 0. The array is integer data type, so I were here use percentage %d, and the array name is we have to given here the marks, which is indicated by the indices I and terminated by the semicolon. So I want to every marks on the next line, therefore I mention here slash l. Look at here, we have to declare the array marks, size is 5, we have to initialize the array, we want to print array, so here I use a for loop. Initialize value is 0 up to 5. Now I am running this program. Look at here, the marks will be displayed over here. I hope all of you understand this. Okay, now until now we learn one dimensional array. Now we have to move on to the two dimensional array. Two-dimensional array is a collection of elements of the same data type, like one-dimensional array, but it contains two indices. The first indices indicates row and the second indices indicates the column. Then we can say that the two-dimensional array is a collection of elements of similar data type, but arranged in the form of row and column. It looks similar to a table or a matrix where data is organized in a grid-like structure. A two-dimensional array is also known as array of array because each row of the array can consider as a sequence of one-dimensional array. This structure helps us organize related data more efficiently. Unlike one-dimensional array where only one index is required, in two-dimensional array uses two indices to access the element. The first index is represent the row number and the second index represent the column number. For example, if we write marks in square bracket 2 and again write down square bracket 3, the first index indicate the third row and the second index indicates the fourth column. Uh, since indexing start from 0, two-dimensional array is are very useful for storing a tabular data. Common example includes matrices, student marks in different subject, timetable, spreadsheet, and other information that naturally fits row and column. Because the data is organized in a grid format, it becomes much easier to process, search, display large amount of related information. This makes two-dimensional array are useful in many programming languages. To summarize, we can say that two-dimensional array store element of the same data type in row and columns and is also called as an array of an array. Use two indices to access each element and mainly used to represent tabular of matrix based data. Declaration of two-dimensional array. The declaration of two-dimensional array defines the data type, array name, and the number of rows and columns. When we declare a two-dimensional array, the compiler reserves enough memory to store all elements in a table-like structure. We can say that array declaration of a two-dimensional array same as a one-dimensional array, but in that we have to use extra one indices. Okay, the element of two-dimensional array are arranged in a row and column. Since the array has two dimension, we need to specify both row size and also column size while declaring it. Look at the screen. In that we have to declare the syntax of the two-dimensional array, data type, array name, and in square bracket we have to mention the row size, and in second square bracket we have to mention the column size. Here data type is the type of data we want to store in that array. Array name is the name of the array. Row size indicates the number of row, and column size indicates the number of columns. For example, here I use array name as a matrix, data type is integer, row size is a 5 and column size is a 5. This declare create two-dimensional array, integer name matrix, 5 row and 5 columns. Since there are 5 rows and 5 columns, the array can store total 25 integer. The element are accessed using two indices, where the first index represent row and the second index represent the column. As in one dimensional array, indexing start from 0. Uh, Another important point is that declaring two-dimensional array only allocate memory for storing the element. It does not assign any value to them. To store value, we need to initialize the array. So, in we can say that the declaration of two-dimensional array specify the data type name, row and column, allocate the required memory, and organize the data in a table or matrix form. Okay. In the previous slide, we learned how to declare two-dimensional array. Now let's understand by in this slide how to initialize the array. Initialization means assigning value to the element of two-dimensional array. In C, this is usually done at the time of declaration. There are different ways to initialize two-dimensional array, such as using the opening closing curly brace, flat list, and or zero initialization. The first method is compile time initialization. Using nested braces, we had to use uh, value way to specify by using opening and closing curly braces. Here we can see on the screen that I have declared the array name R of data type integer, row size is 2 and column size is 3. Okay, the first row contains the value 1, 2, 3. Here we have to mention in opening and closing curly brace. And uh, second is specify the columns. How many columns you want? 3. Now it contains the value 4, 5, 6. This method is easy to understand because the value are arranged exactly as they appear in the table. The second method is called as a flat list method. In this approach, all values are written in a single list without nested braces. For example, here I had declared the same array name of size row size 2 and column size 3. Though total the elements are 6, we have to directly initialize over here. The compiler stores this value in a row major order, meaning the first fill the first row completely before moving to the next row. The third method is we can say that zero initialization. Here we have to declare the same name, the name of the array R, and the row size is 2, column size is 3, and in curly braces we have to initialize the value 0. Then the compiler automatically initialize every element of the array to be a 0. This method is useful when we want to create an empty array before assigning value later in the program. So we can say that a two-dimensional array can be initialized using nested braces, flat list, or a zero initialization. Each method is valid and choice depends upon the requirement of the program. Now we learn a simple example of a two-dimensional array. In this example, we had to add the two matrices. So I write down the comment first over here. Addition of two matrices. Okay, so I want to first include the files. We have to close the comment first. We have to write down the preprocessor hash include stdio standard input output.th file, because in this program we are using a printf function. Okay, then I have start the execution by using the main function. I write down here the main function. Main function is enclosed with opening and closing curly brace. I want to add two matrices A and B, and the addition will be stored into the C variable. So we required a three array. The first array is A. The array size we have to input it the two-dimensional array. So I have included here 3, size of the row is 3, column size is also 3. Okay, we can specify the maximum size, it's okay. Then we have to declare the second array a of 3 of size same size, and resultant matrix will be stored into the C, whose size also specify here row and column size. Okay, now I want to input the first array, therefore I write down the here message printf enter the first matrix. Okay. For that, to access the elements of two-dimensional array, we required a nested for. The outer for a row and inner for columns. So you know that array will always start from the indices 0. Therefore, in a for loop, I initialize value of I is equal to 0. Before using I, we have to must declare it. So I declare here I for row and j for column. We want to input a two-dimensional array, so value will be to change up to the 3 less than 3 I plus plus for increment of the row, and inner for loop is j, which is always start from 0, and how many column we have to specify less than 3. Then I have included here the increment operator. So we have used a for loop. This is the opening curly brace for this outer for loop, and this one is opening curly brace and closing curly brace for inner for loop. I want to input it, therefore I here use scanf statement. Is integer type, therefore I use here specifier percentage %d and specify for the array name is A. Row is specified with the help of I and column is specified with the help of J. In this way, we have to input the first matrix. This is the opening and closing for inner for loop, and this one opening and closing for outer for loop. Similar way, we have to input the second matrix. So I have just copy over here. Okay, and here instead of a first, I want to similarly way we have to input the second matrix. The second matrix is denoted by B variable, so instead of a E, we have to place over here B. Okay, now we want to close this outer for loop. Now I want to addition. So I have message the statement printf addition of two matrices is. I want to turn the next line. So I have mentioned here slash n terminated by symbol. We know that we have to add each elements. Okay. In one matrices we have four elements. Therefore, again we require a two for loop that nested for. I value is initialized 0 less than 3 I plus plus. This is the opening curly brace for outer for loop. Now we have to write down the inner for loop, which is for column. We have to initialize value 0 to up to the 3 and then increment the value of j plus plus. Okay. We have to write down the opening and closing curly brace. We have to must write down it very carefully. Yeah? I have to write down opening and closing array. I want to add resultant matrix. I want to store in C of ij. Therefore, I write down C of ij is equal to A of ij plus B of ij. Okay. Now I also want to print that C of ij, that resultant matrix. Therefore, I write down here the printf statement percentage d, and after each element in a row we want a space. Therefore, I use here slash d for tabular, comma, and I want to print C of ij. So I write down C of ij over here and terminate this statement by semicolon. After the complete of the row, I want next row on the next line. Therefore, after completing the particular row, I have write down here printf on the next line. Therefore, I write down only a slash n over here. Okay, now our program is complete. Anything remain? Look at here. We have to use three array ABC. We have to declare here the array. Then we have to input the first matrix by using two for loop, in outer for row and inner for the columns. Similarly way we have to input the second matrix, which is B. I values start from 0 to up to 3. Same J values start from 0 to 3 and input the B of ij. I want to add it. For resultant matrix, we have to again use the two for loop. This is for row, this is for the column, and I write down the execution statement. C of ij is equal to A of ij plus B of ij. I want to print it in the matrix form. For to place the gap between the two elements, I use here slash d, and after the complete the row I want next line. Therefore, after the completion of the this inner for loop, we have to write down the next statement. For that purpose, we have to write down printf slash l for the next line. Okay, now I want to execute this program. Very good. It's required enter the first matrix. I input the first matrix as first element is 1, second, third, and the fourth. Okay, we have to given here something is missing. Execution is problem. Wait. Now we have to input the 3 by 3 matrix. So how many elements are required? 9 elements. So I have mentioned here the 9 element. 1, enter the matrix, 1. Second element is 2. Third element is 3. Fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, and 9. Now they ask about the second matrix. Second also, matrix also element I same the elements I inputted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay, the first matrix element is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to 9. The second matrix is the same element. I want to add each element. Therefore, our matrix 1 plus 1, 2. 2 plus 2, 4. Okay, now we have to display the result. Okay, look at here. The addition is displayed here. First element is added with 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 8, 5, 5, 10, 6, 6, 12, 7, 7, 14, 8, 8, 16, 9, 9, 18. And in this way, we had to learn the addition of two matrices. Now we learn a third data type, multidimensional array. A multidimensional array is an array that has more than two dimensions. In other words, if an array requires more than two indices or a subscript to access its element, it is called multidimensional array. A multidimensional array is used to more complex data that cannot be represented easily using only rows and columns. It extends the concept of two-dimensional array by adding one or more additional dimension. The general syntax of that multidimensional array you can see on the screen. Data type, array name, and we have to specify number of indices, S1, S2, S3 and Sn in a square bracket, where S1 and S2, S3 are represent the size of each dimension depending on the requirement. An array we can have 3 dimension, 4 dimension or even more. Let's look at the example over here mentioned. Uh, this is the three-dimensional array because it uses three indices. Okay, and the array name is survey. It can imagine as a collection of multiple two-dimension table. The second example I have declared here, uh, the array name is table of data type float, and this is a four-dimensional array because it contains four dimensions. So such arrays are mainly used in advanced application where data has multiple levels of organization. Uh, Multidimensional are commonly used in scientific computing, image processing, computer graphics, simulation, engineering application, and machine learning, where large complex database need to be stored to process efficiently. So, in summarize, we can say that a multidimensional array is an array with more than two dimensions and uses multiple indices to access the elements and is suitable for storing complex and highly structured data. This complete our discussion on the different type of array in C programming. In one-dimensional array, two-dimensional array and multi-dimensional array. Application of an array. Array are one of the most widely used data structure because they provide efficient way to store, manage multiple value of the same data type. They are used in many areas of computer science and software development. Some example I have mentioned over here. The first application is in data structure. Arrays serve as the foundation for implementing important data structure such as stack, queue, and hash table. These data structure are used in many real-world applications, including web browser, printer, and operating system. Array is also used to store a string in C. A string is simply one dimensional array of a character terminated by a null character. This allows us to store, manipulate names, message, and other uh, text data efficiently. The second application in mathematics and graphics. Array are used to represent vector and matrices, which is essential in mathematical calculation and linear algebra. They are also used in image processing, where image is stored as a two-dimensional array of pixels, with each element representing the color of or intensity of the pixel. The third application is a system operation. Array are used in operating system to implement processing or a CPU scheduling and task management. They are also used as look tables, which are store predefined value for fast and direct access, improving the efficiency of many programmings. So, array are widely used in data structure, string handling, mathematical purpose, computer graphics, and system organization. Their simplicity, fast access, and organized storage make them one of the most important concept of programming. With this, we have completed the topic and array. Thank you everyone for your time and attention. Today we learn about array in C programming, including the definition, type, declaration, initialization, and various real-world application. We also understand how array help us to store and manage multiple value efficiently using a single value name. I hope this session gives you clear understanding of the basic concept of array and how they are used in programming. This knowledge will serve as a strong foundation for learning more advanced data structure and programming techniques. Thank you once again.